Hi, welcome to Dawn Center's first ever virtual Survivor Speak Out. This is presented on Zoom by Dawn Center advocates and participants, and this is in honor of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So I'm going to introduce Leah. Leah is one of our advocates, and she's going to go over what you can expect from this event.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yay! So welcome to our first Survivor Speak Out event that's virtual. Like Amanda said, thank you for being patient and rolling with our technical difficulties. This because of the pandemic, normally we host a Survivor candlelight vigil event to spend some time respecting survivor stories and hearing them, and also spending some time reflecting on lives that might have been lost in the past year due to domestic violence. But because of the pandemic, we've had to take our event virtual. So we're transitioning. This is new for us, and possibly it might be a tool we use in the future to help share survivor stories. So before we get started, we wanted to do some housekeeping items. First off, we are actually already recording this session, and the session's going to be continued to be recording till the end of the presentation and the end of all the speakers sharing. And we just want a safety plan around knowing that some of the survivors who are sharing their stories tonight are keeping their cameras off or have changed their identifying names because they aren't comfortable with some of the risks that might come with video sharing. And we do intend, as Dawn Center, to use this as an awareness video. So we do plan to post this video to our Facebook page and share it with the community so that we can raise awareness about survivors in our community. And also when you're sharing, if you don't mind not sharing personal names or identifying information, that way you can just keep your own safety and the safety of your family or loved ones protected. We are also, we're focusing on empowerment. We're focusing on healing, strength, and resilience. There is a place and a time as survivors to use our voice when it comes to political change or political candidates and social changes that might revolve around government or law enforcement, other leaders in our community. There's a time and place for that, but this is not that time and place. Tonight's event is really to focus on stories of how survivors can celebrate being survivors and how they've overcome the abuse that they have endured. So we are going to get started. Our survivors, we spoke with them in advance and talked to them about these agreements that we've made previously. Some are going to share an artful expression like a poem or a reading that might not be their own personal story, but something that speaks to their personal experience. Anything that makes their voice as a survivor of domestic violence feel heard. We ask that all other participants be respectful in keeping their microphones muted while others are speaking so that we don't catch interrupting background noise. And as you're listening, either here live with us tonight or whether you're someone who's going to be watching the recording, we ask that you would just really reflect on what the survivors are sharing and take time to really sit with it. Some of the things might be uncomfortable, some of the things might be painful to hear, but there's also going to be a lot of hopeful things shared. And we hope that as a goal in raising awareness that this might inspire people to take action on behalf of your community and survivors. And at the end of this presentation, we're going to share some resources on how you can connect either with Dawn Center as an agency and opportunities we have for community support and volunteers. And we just hope that you enjoy listening to what is going to be shared tonight.
All right, thank you. So we went ahead and stopped the screen share. Our first story, the survivor is actually not present for, but she did write something that she wanted to share. So I'm going to share that with you. This story was brought to our attention during the Veterinary Social Work Summit. We had an advocate present there about domestic violence and the effect on pets and how animal violence against animals and violence against humans intersect. So this is a survivor story about how she came to have the cat that she has, and the cat's name is Lady Gaga. If you followed the story of Lady Gaga, then you know how she came to live with me. If not, she was my cousin Julie's cat and was orphaned when Julie was murdered by her boyfriend. I adopted Lady Gaga the day of Julie's funeral. I think about Julie a lot, and I've been thinking about her even more than usual, as everyone is told to social distance and stay in our homes. Homes are not safe for everyone. Sometimes people are in the greatest danger in their own homes. If you or someone you know needs help, please reach out. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE. They can help and put you in contact with local resources. So that is written by a survivor of somebody who was lost to homicide. The next speaker we have is Migdalia, and Migdalia is going to read a poem.
The name of the poem is When You Feel You Can't Go On. I'm sorry that you're hurting so desperately right now. I know how painful the seconds and minutes and days can be, how long the nights are. I understand how very hard hanging on is and how much courage it takes. I ask, though, that you hold on to one day at a time. Just one day, and slowly this despair will pass. The feelings you fear you're trapped in will serve their purpose and then fade away. Difficult to imagine, isn't it? Almost impossible to believe when every cell in your body, it seems, cries out in agony, desperately in need of comfort. When it feels like the only thing in the whole world that can touch your pain and banish it is beyond your grasp. And after all this time, the assurance that you will heal has become an empty, broken promise. Just let one tiny cell in your body continue to believe in the promise of healing. Just one. You can surrender every other cell to your despair. Just that one little cell of faith that you can heal and be whole again is enough to keep you going, is enough to lead you through the darkness. Although it can't banish your suffering, it can sustain you until the time comes for you to let your pain go. And the letting go can only occur on its own time, as much as we would like to push the pain away forever. Hold on. Hold on to appreciate the beauty of the earth, to feel the songs of the birds in your heart, to learn and to teach, to laugh a genuine laugh, to dance on the beach, to rest peacefully, to experience contentment, to want to be no other place but in the here and now, to trust in yourself and to trust your life. Hold on, because it's worth the terrible waiting. Hold on, because you are worthy. Hold on, because the wisdom that will follow you out of this darkness will be a tremendous gift. Hold on, because you have so much love and joy waiting to be experienced. Hold on, because life is precious, even though it can bring terrible losses. Hold on, because there's so much that you can now imagine waiting ahead on your journey, a destiny that only you can fulfill. Hold on, although you're exhausted and your grasp is shaky, and you want more than anything to let go sometimes. Hold on, even though. Please hold on. So much in life can be difficult, even impossible to understand. I know. So many of us have cried in despair. Why? And still the answers and the comfort fail to show. Survival can be a long and lonely road in spite of all those who stumbled down the path before you. And it can be a torturous journey. So easy to get lost, and yet to avoid even a painful step. And the light, The light at the end of the dark tunnel for so long cannot be seen, although eventually you begin to feel its warmth as you move forward. And forward you must move in order to get to through the hell of remembering, of despair, of rage, of grief. Keep looking forward, please. Rest if you must. Doubt your ability to survive the journey if you have to, but never let go of the guide ropes. Although when you close your fingers around them, your hands feel empty, they are there. Please trust me, they are there. When you're exhausted, when all you have to count on is a weak and weary faith, hold on. When you think you want to die, hold on until you recognize that it's not death you seek, but for the pain to go away. Hold on, because this darkness will surely fade away. Hold on, please hold on. I'm done.
Thank you, Miguelia, for sharing. That was super powerful. That was a beautiful poem. Do you know who wrote it?
Tammy Byron Fowles.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Miguelia. Okay, our next speaker is Rebecca.
Hi there. When I think about stories, I think about my mom's story. Stories from survivors are so incredibly powerful, and they have an impact that ripples and moves throughout time. And I'm so proud to be able to share her story. She's come to a space in life where she can't share her story anymore. So I'm honored to share a little bit of her story, because thanks to her stories, because she told me her stories, I can say that I haven't experienced domestic violence. In the 70s, my mother married a man who was a police officer, and he was supposed to be an upstanding, law-abiding, wonderful man. And soon after they married, she found out he was none of those things. He beat her, he raped her, he strangled her, he kicked her and threw her downstairs. And after she had her first baby with him, he continued on those same things with that baby. He wouldn't stop. And when she would call law enforcement, they laughed at her. They joked with him about her bruises, about the blood coming from her face. And she knew he would kill her if she tried to leave. So she stayed, and she prayed, and she prayed. She became pregnant again, and she knew that somehow she had to get away. She didn't know how. She didn't have money. She didn't have resources. Her family had tried, but he threatened them. And again, when she called the police, his friends came and they laughed at her and they joked. And she felt helpless and alone and desperate. And as the baby grew inside her, she knew he will continue this same thing with this baby that he's doing with my now 4-year-old. And one day someone gave her a little card with a scripture. It was Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And she clung to that little piece of paper, knowing somehow I can get out of this. With the help of some of her friends and her family, she got away from him. Despite his threats, despite his violence, she found a way through the resources that she had around her, which were not many. She sought divorce, and she was able to end the marriage just before she had the baby. And she named him Jeremy in honor of that scripture. And years later, when she had me, she continued to tell her story. She told her story many, many times. Many times she talked about what it was to be desperate, what it was to feel alone, what it was to cling to a scripture that she felt was the only thing that helped her have hope to get away. And all her stories when I was a kid were just stories, were just things that meant something to me, but I didn't realize how it was inspiring me to understand what love really was, what kindness and gentleness and compassion really were, and what a marriage should really look like. And I'm thankful for my mother's story, for all of the stories that she told me that she didn't hide from me, even though they hurt and they were hard to tell. She told them because she didn't want the same future for me. And I think that made an impression on me. So later in my life, when I began to look for a boyfriend and for a husband, I was thinking about my mother's story. And I was thinking about raised voices were not okay, and hands that hurt me were not okay. People who tried to isolate me or keep me from my friends, that was not okay. And I knew all of that because my mother told me her story. It's so important that we share those stories. It's so important that we're here tonight in the way that we can be to share our stories, because we never know who it'll impact, whether it's going to be our daughters or our nieces or our nephews, whether it'll be our friends. But I'm glad that I can share her story and continue to share her story, even though she can't do that anymore, because it's important. It changed my life, and I'm hoping that maybe it'll have an impact on someone else's life.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rebecca. Your mom is a very courageous and brave woman, and she raised you to be the same way. Our next speaker is Tess. Tess is going to be sharing a poem tonight.
Thank you, Rebecca, for sharing that. And also, just so you know, your mother did a really great service to a lot of people, including me. So,
Tess, are you there?
can you hear me?
It's very faint.
Let me see. Can you hear me better now?
You're still pretty faint.
Can you hear me now?
Just barely. You're coming in a hair.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, what I'm going to do is send this to one of you to read.
Right there, you were just starting to come in a little louder at the end there.
Can any of you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, don't know what's going on, but I apologize. All right, so this is called A Valentine for Narcissus. As shocking as it was when your inner nightmare began to show itself in fits of rage over nothing, the dark moods of heavy anger and blame that would descend out of nowhere with no warning, and the attacks on my attempts to love you. There, your chronic inability to communicate with basic human kindness. It was the way you would bully my boundaries, yelling and attacking every attempt I made at freedom, space, individuation. It was the way you refused to leave me alone when I caught wind of the harm you were dealing. It was the way you snuck into the bushes of my life, set up camp in my reality, infiltrated my sphere, stopped at nothing until you would have me. I was a target you hunted, drilled, and forced your way past my boundaries, over and over and over. You wore me down again and again, refused to accept my no, refused to let me break up with you, refused to stop hunting me, stalked and seduced and convinced your way through until I was tired and exhausted from fighting you away and just gave up, limp and defeated. It was the sick way you called this, your steadfast devotion. It was the twisted way you felt sorry for yourself, for how I was trying to get the fuck away from you, how untrusting and unloving and unkind I was for trying to escape the jaws of hell. It was the insanity of how right I was about everything I saw, how right I was to get away, and how ruthlessly you hunted me, like I was crazy and delusional, and you believed in true love. It was the way you would brainwash me and tell me repeatedly for hours, no one's ever loved you like this. Why would you try to get away from me? Why would you try to leave me? We belong together. You are my beloved. Over and over for hours and hours until I was putty in your hands, a compliant ally to your agenda, programming my body and mind until we shared the common enemy. There was something alarming about how you reached into my insides, played with the blood and guts like you wanted to possess them, a quality of your love that felt like being eaten and consumed, an invasion into private parts of me, a worship of my attention like an object to ingest and control. Every aspect of my otherness was an enemy to be obliterated, no matter how seemingly innocuous or benign. Anything I said or did that revealed that I was a separate individual with my own reality was attacked, silenced, corrected, and conformed, or eaten and consumed. Sometimes in ways that would shock me with their absurdity, sometimes so subtle, covert, and sneaky I didn't realize what was happening. A slow quicksand until I was lost and confused and out of my mind. And then you would offer me your stable, steady hand because you love me that much. And my God, man, your sickness finally made me sick too. Bedridden and limping from the toxic poison you fed me, like a slow drip of insanity where I couldn't think straight anymore. And the only thing that felt safe that I could lean on was your words. They were all I had. Maybe if I believe in them, they'll become real. Like the Velveteen Rabbit, they just need my believing. It is not an easy choice, you see. Some never make it out. Most will leave 11 times before they crack the code. And it is like cracking a code and mastering a labyrinth, a maze your soul has been lost in. This reality of a haunted shell disguised as the beloved. And that is all. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you. Okay. We're going to bring Migdalia back, and Migdalia is going to share her story.
I was in a domestic violence marriage for 13 years. I felt like a prisoner in my own home. I was not allowed to learn to drive. I was not allowed to finish my college degree. I had to stay in the house unless I went out with my ex-husband. I was not allowed to work. The only thing he wanted was for me to stay home and be alone. He isolated me. I was forced to become dependent on him because I did not have a job, so I needed his money to buy the kids what they needed. I was blamed for everything that went wrong, and most of the time it was not my fault. I did not realize I was in such a bad marriage. I hurt my kids by staying, but I'm glad they have forgiven me. When we were outside the home, my ex did not treat me like this, like he did at home. Eventually, he started lashing out at the kids and I in the public places. People could not believe that what they were hearing or seeing. Remember, you are stronger than your scars. That's it.
Thank you, Migdalia. Okay. Our next speaker is Rhonda. Rhonda, come on up and unmute yourself.
Hello. I am a domestic violence survivor. It started when I was 18. I was in college. I met this guy I worked with, and he said I was a virgin, and he said I'm missing out and that I should give him a chance. And it started off really romantic and all the attention he was giving me. Then suddenly he would question me where I am at, to the point where I had to take pictures of myself in college, where I moved out of my parents' house at such a young age, didn't know where I was going, what I was doing as my career, just left and stayed with him. Soon after, I noticed the isolation, the control, the belittling. He's never physically hurt me besides shoving me, but the emotional abuse was unbearable. I was called every name in the book. I've been called crazy for 3.5 years I was with him, to the point where I began to really become crazy and bash my head and try to hurt myself to forget the pain. I felt worthless. I felt alone. It got to the point where I was going to commit suicide. I grew up as a Christian girl, a loving family. Not perfect, of course, but I had people surrounding me that loved me. But he isolated me completely. I was able to work, but he had to know when I was coming home and when I was going. I lost my best friend. I lost my parents. They still reach out to me during that moment. But as I sit here today, from 4 years ago of trying to commit suicide, I rekindled my friendship with my best friend. I found my voice, and I'm proud to say that I am still alive, and I did not pull that trigger 4 years ago. I'm honored to be here tonight, to be a voice for those as young as I am. I'm in my 20s, and it is never too late to always seek help and be the strong woman that we are meant to be. Thank you.
So much for sharing, and we're so glad that you're with us, and we're so glad you're using your voice to speak out for others. That is all of the speakers that are here for tonight. We are going to close with a poem, and the name of this poem is Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken? Bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Okay, we are going to go back to screen share for a moment. What is happening? There we go. So every year worldwide, according to the UN, 30,000 lives are lost to domestic violence. Many of them are women, but that also includes men, and adults of other genders, and of course, children. So we would like to take a moment of silence to honor those lives. Okay. And before we sign off, we are going to have Jody come up and speak. Jody is another one of our domestic violence outreach advocates, and Jody is going to talk to us about some resources.
Hi, y'all. Thank you for coming out tonight. So, like Amanda said, some of the resources that we do provide, we know that every year, our candlelight vigil can be heavy, and sometimes you might need to debrief with someone after. We do offer a 24-hour hotline. Our 24-hour hotline, the phone number is listed here. It is 352-686-8430. We also offer support group, individual advocacy, legal advocacy, economic empowerment, child welfare advocacy, and emergency shelter, and a list of other things. If you or someone you know is in need of domestic violence or sexual violence services, the statewide hotline is 1-800-500-119. The child abuse and vulnerable adults hotline is 1-800-96-ABUSE. Once again, thank you guys for coming out. If you are in need of any support, we are here for you. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.